When we think of Pa, the corporeal soul, as a notion of perhaps cells that become or have decided to become a living body, and a body that has an expiry date, that changes us, or that gives us and limits us in different ways. And nowadays we think of that as genetics, epigenetics, and things like that. It also holds in some way our connection to our physical instincts and our sort of survival tactics, if you will, from reflexive movement to maybe how we like plan to deal with some calamity or something like that. And not so much in the mental sense, but in the visceral sense of how we respond to something that might threaten our survival. So 3 things about Pa that are useful to be aware of. It brings into our inherited physical characteristics and our sense of vitality. So that might be your physical size and the sense of height and things, your physical strength and connection to your body, and also this quality of mojo or aliveness or vitality. And we want to recognize that, with traditions that revolve around animism, there's an understanding that anima, meaning spirit in action or spirit, moving through form, the form is the container, and it is also the expression of what spirit is doing. So that's an important thing to sense in with, because once we can accept those parameters of our life, we can really begin living our life wholeheartedly. Paul also brings our reflexes, in the sense of, well, driving, how to make sure you don't crash. Our physical agility, our just basic physicality, how grounded we are in our embodiment, and or how nervous or perhaps jumpy or flighty we are, and or if it keeps going in that direction, how maybe phobic we become about things that might impact our well-being. So the third thing is our adaptive capacity with respect to our healing our physical body and healing our emotional or somato-emotional self that we feel as embodied states. One way that we look at this, perhaps more in the body, is the paw is related and is considered to kind of reside in your, or is perhaps stored by your lungs. And that doesn't just mean your physical lungs, it's that system in Chinese medicine. And that helps us integrate in the physical world as soon as we breathe our first breath, and it allows us to sort of slowly separate from the world as a corporeal soul out at the end of our last breath. And because of that aspect of Chinese medicine and emotionality, we often relate to the paw as the part of us that wants to grieve the woundedness, to deal with our grievances, to deal with the imbalances, the things that don't seem fair or authentic in the way people's bodies are used or treated. And, that can get into some pretty specific stuff, but grieving isn't just about sadness. Grieving, grievance, to be aggrieved. All of those words mean you're in a kind of complex emotional pain, and during the grieving process, it can separate into some anger, some sadness, some regret, some disappointment, some loss, some perhaps joy, and other things that can all come from what we learn as we grow. And this helps us with any kind of unresolved trauma. It helps us in moments of difficulty when we're perhaps more skilled with these things. Because otherwise we get stuck kind of fighting with our intuition, fighting with our emotionality, fighting with our instincts in a way. And that's when things really get complicated. That's when the psychology, psychiatry part really comes to become important. Because it's settles in the lungs in that way and has a lot to do with grieving or unearthing the turmoil of emotion before we can break it down to individual emotions. One of the most effective ways to interact with paw and to begin the process of healing in that way is breath work. Relates to your lungs, but also relates to state shift and to a curious kind of inquiry about what we maybe need to learn, need to feel, and perhaps to lose a bit of our sense of control. Because until we loosen those boundaries and that boundedness, we can't really begin the grieving, healing, changing process. There's another aspect of paw we call the seven paw, and that has more to do with kind of the ghouls and ghosts that people can turn into as they become more resentful, more regretting, more angry, more loathing of everything, probably including themselves. And as that becomes kind of a sense of identity, the concern from a ancient shamanic aspect of Chinese medicine is when you die, if that paw is still held in your corporeal soul, it will turn into, again, we're not taking this literally, but a kind of ghost. Or it might be passed on to your kids. And you can see that in families that have really rigid religions or rules or punishments or the complete lack of anything that contains things. People often grow as people formed really, really profoundly by their environment. And sometimes we have to relieve ourselves of the kind of paw or the ghouls and ghosts of our family history and what we often nowadays call ancestral trauma or generational trauma, because it's still held in our sense of who we are. So one of the reasons I'm doing this is just to share something I found profoundly beautiful and kind of useful in about 30 years of clinical practice helping people. I'm teaching a course called Qingzhibing, or Embodied Psychotherapy, Spiritual Recapitulation, and Traditional Chinese Medicine. And I'll be offering more of these presentations between now and January to give people a sense of what it's all about. But if you are interested in Chinese medicine, acupuncture, herbology, meditation, shamanism, Taoist practice, Zen practice, and you're aware that maybe understanding a little bit about healing minds, healing hearts, healing souls might support your practice, then I would encourage you to look into that course. If that doesn't feel like the place you want to go, there are other courses that I offer on Qigong. Some are just a week long, some are 10 weeks long, some are commitments to learn to be a teacher and things like that. So if you're interested in that, get a hold of me as well. And I also just started a Substack, so if you're on any of my email lists, you're probably starting to get those. And if you want to connect with me through there, please do, because the more I can engage with people, support people with information and what I have to offer, and people can support me enough, then I'm working in clinic less, and I'm writing books more, and I'm offering courses more. So I'm hoping to create that reciprocity as well. So again, thank you for watching. I hope you're well. If you have any questions, get a hold of me. And yeah, this whole thing is kind of sacred, and that changes everything. So have a great day.